Welcome back to the Nerdrotic channel. My name is Gary Buechler. I am live in San Francisco, California, and I come to you from nerdrotic.com. And once again, we are back talking about Doctor Who. Hot subject on this channel of late. But sorry, I'm hearing myself. God damn it. That's a rookie move right there. How's everybody doing? We made it through another episode of Doctor Who, The Witchfinders, season 11, episode 8. Great. I got my own notification too. So, yeah, before we even get started, I will be spoiling this episode. It has not aired in the States yet, but thank you, Viking Bitch, for the spoiler paddles. But as far as being a regular old Doctor Who episode, we're still not getting these yet. And while it wasn't as bad as Arachnids in the UK, which I still think is the worst episode of the season, it was just kind of a nothing episode again. So the Doctor and the gang land in 17th century Lancashire. And I can't pronounce the name of that town. Let me see. It's Lancashire. And during the era of King James the First, so there is witch trials. And we have Becca Savage, who is the landowner there, and she's been running some witch trials, and she has killed 35 people. And of course, they are dunked by a sacred tree that they cut down, which we'll find out about later. And if they drown, they're not witches, but they're dead. And if they survive, they're witches, so they get hanged. Of course, the Doctor landed there. They were looking for, they were going to go to the coronation of Queen Elizabeth I. And they missed that. And that's pretty normal for Doctor Who. And then Ryan says probably the greatest line for anything this season, which is this is way too dark for me, which I thought that was very poignant and good. So yes, we have witch trials, and we find out, of course, that it's Becca Savage is trying to save the town from Satan by killing everybody and save their souls. And King James shows up. He's the best thing in this episode. If I got a season full of King James, I would have been very happy. There was some pretty good lines. It was well played. It was pretty funny, but it didn't save the episode because once again, we got stupid bad guys that came out of nowhere. And it's like, oh my God. So the decision to keep the Daleks and the Cybermen out of the season is just looking worse and worse. And again, the companions are just there to watch. Now, Graham remains the best thing in this entire show. He brought his lunch pail to work. You know, he came, you know, and gave a good performance again, and he's pretty funny. But God, Ryan and Yaz are just nothing. They're just there to spectate. And honestly, we're never really going to know how good of a job Jodie Whittaker is doing because she has less screen time because we have so many these other characters. Plus, you have to each episode, you have to introduce like the townspeople. Of course, we had Willa was is her name? Willa was her name, who was the granddaughter of the first witch who got drowned, and of course she dies in the beginning of the episode, and the Doctor automatically suspects something's going on. She pulls out and she identifies herself as oh God, I'm brain farting right now, as the head witchfinder to Becca. And of course, you know, I remember not every Doctor Who episode, but trying to like, sometimes they would change their costume to try to fit in to the time they're in. But of course they went to the wrong time. So I guess that explains that. But nobody thought it was really weird except for King James, like how they were dressed. And yeah, so they're on the hunt for what's going on, you know, what's behind the witch trials. And we find out basically it's evil mud. And again, we have like a really weird, benign bad guy. It turns into something else later, but it turns out that it's mud that can possess people. So we got some zombie witches at some point that rise. And that was found out through Yaz while Willow was burying her grandma. A mud tentacle came out and attacked her and was saved by Yaz. And they're not sure what that was. In the meantime, we get some background with King James, and he's all about fighting Satan, and he's got a crush on Ryan, of course. So our little gang, and then the one I've been kind of waiting for this. I'm surprised they haven't done this more. And I guess to their credit, they held back on this. But when King James was trying to suss out what was going on, and they found out that the doctor, uh, uh, identified herself as the head witch hunter, and then it said she was the assistant witch hunter, and then of course Graham's like, oh, he's all, yo, she must be your underling, and she's like, what? I'm the assistant. And oh, this little lassie, a woman in charge? Don't be silly, and some of that stuff was pretty funny. It was. So of course he thought Graham was in charge, and he gets his hat, which is pretty funny. And then they find out that Becca Savage, who was the landowner and who has been conducting all the witch trials and killed 35 people so far, was indeed infected by this possessing mud. We find out later on that the mud is the Morax, which is some alien race that had been imprisoned on a hill, and it's the lock to this prison was a tree, an ancient alien technology, which was a tree. And when Becca Savage cut down that tree on the hill because it disrupted her good view, she ended up getting infected with the mud. And instead of, she tried to do something about it. And the first witch that she killed was, she was related to her, and she asked her for help. And when she couldn't help, she had her drowned as a witch because she knew what was going on. So it turns out Becca Savage actually killed all these people, calling them witches just to hide what was going on with her. And she thought it was the work of Satan, and so did King James, of course. Then, of course, they accused the doctor eventually of being a witch because she keeps bringing out her sonic screwdriver and not being very subtle about it. And she tries to talk herself out of being drowned, and she doesn't. To King James, we get a little background on King James. His mother had left him, and he had all these horrific things happen to family members. So of course he trusts no one, and that's why he's kind of a religious zealot. And again, he is the best thing in this episode. But it ends up being this Morax race that can infect or could possess bodies, and they're just they look like poop, to be honest with you. It's mud, but it looked like a big thing of poop running around. It was just a nothing villain again. And and by the way, they had their royals, so they serve a king. So they need their king to infect the body of King James at the end for reasons we don't know. I don't know why they can't just, do it. They were going to take over the planet or something. We got no background on them, but their king had to infect King James. And when that was thwarted by the doctor, of course, then they all went back in. The doctor fixed the lock, fixed the tree, and sent all the Moraxes back to prison. Becca Savage, of course, she was alive when the mud possessed the dead people. They had more control over it, but it took a while to possess a living person. That's why it took a while with Becca Savage. And at the end, she didn't want to go, and then she ends up getting killed by King James. And the silliest part of a very silly episode was at the end when the doctor, finally rallies the troops and gets everybody with these torches, and the mud is it can't handle the smoke from that tree that was the lock. So they cut off pieces of that tree and make torches. And they were in such a hurry to save the king that they were walking up a hill very slowly, going, "We'll get you. We're going to stop you now," as they walked up the hill very slowly. And it just really exemplified what's going on with this show. Is there's absolutely no stakes. There's no danger at all. We're just getting through episodes. It's the lightest, mildest, like I said in my last video, coloring book plot. There's like nothing going on. These are such forgettable episodes. And this is really what you don't want to do when you're in season 11, when you do something drastic, when you bring in the first female doctor. I'll say it before, I'll say it again. You got to give her a chance. You got to give her good writing. And it's just terrible. It's brutally bad. It's hard to get through these episodes. And thankfully, there's only a couple left. Yeah, we'll probably cover the New Year's Eve episode, but then I'm done. I can't watch this show anymore. It's so bad. It is really, really bad. And yeah, I was looking at a review on Digital Spy, and it's just, oh, this is great. And I'm like, okay, All right. What I'm going to get to the chat in a moment. What this show has become is something definitely not for me, and that sucks. You know, this is a show I used to sit down with my family, with my two boys, and watch Doctor Who every weekend. It was great every weekend it aired, of course. My boys dipped out a while back with Capaldi just because the writing got lame, and that's where we're at right now. That part is not improved. I've talked about it quite a bit on the channel, and I think a lot of people are starting to agree with me. Some don't, but that's fine. It's all a matter of taste. We cover mostly really good television here, so it's not fair probably to compare a Doctor Who to The Expanse or Legion or Counterpart or something like that. But it's a show that should be on that level as Star Trek. And it's the people in charge of these shows just don't take this shit seriously. They don't. You could tell. Is it a cash grab or whatever they did, they fundamentally changed Doctor Who into YA Saturday morning cartoon Scooby-Doo stuff. And that's fine, but that's not what the show was. There is death in this show, and it's supposed to be a show for everybody. Yes, it's geared towards a younger audience and always should be. And yes, it's geared towards a younger audience in the UK, as it should be. It should never be Americanized. Please don't. But yeah, this isn't something I can sit down and watch with my boys anymore. And that's what they've done in changing the show and trying to make it more accessible and, for more people. They've counted out I can't see a male audience watching this. All right. And there's still differences. Okay. The biggest demo out there still is 18 to 49 men. It's still the biggest demo out there. It doesn't mean you don't want to include women. It doesn't mean you don't want to include everybody else. That's not what we're saying. It's, I always thought Doctor Who was that show. It was the show for everybody. I never thought it needed to change, to be honest with you. I thought it was just fine the way it was. It was, it's always dealt with, reflecting the times, but lightly, like I said before, with cell phones and stuff like that, or computers, or what they did last week with Kerblam, with Amazon, which I didn't have a problem with, but apparently Amazon did. And, listen, this episode leaked last week on Amazon, and I don't think it was an accident, and nobody cared. It didn't end up on any torrent sites, and I checked multiple times. I checked this morning, and I checked 5 different torrent sites, which I don't think is illegal, but don't torrent. It's bad. It costs people jobs. And it wasn't anywhere. I didn't see it anywhere. I don't know if anybody saw anything different, but now we will get to the chat briefly. Man. And apologize for stumbling through the first part. I started hearing myself in my ear, and I hate that. That's irritating as hell. Such a rookie move, because I try to keep the chat up. Hello, everybody. Penn Farm Girl. C. Markin, or is it Camarkin? I don't know. Doctor Who ISGR8. Ichthulu. Cthulhu. I got that. Andrew Dexter, Aki Ross, TM Martin, Cato Roan, Mr. Roboto, Chris Persia, Nathan Norman, Nigel Brought Savage, CD Horde, Philip A. Demick, Brent Newman. Wow, man, we got a full house. Dang, we got a lot of people watching. And I stumbled through that one. Sorry, folks. Let's get to some of the chat. Whistles the X-Files tune, right? The only time a woman would be in charge of something in the 17th century if there is a midwife or if they are a widow. Yes, which she was a widow. And hail to you, Chris Persia, and the lovely nerd minions, of course. Witch Trials is like the Wild West episode with Matt Smith. Yeah, it did kind of feel like that one a little bit. This one had moments in it that were okay. And if somebody wants to hear me say something positive about the show, there's not much, but the concept in the Demons of Punjab of that race that used to be assassins, but then they go and mourn the forgotten dead or the unmourned dead. I thought that was a great concept that you should have centered the whole show around. That was cool. But no, it's throwaway. And my theory on this, folks, is maybe they just don't want Doctor Who to be scary anymore. In trying to make it accessible to everybody and non-offensive, you get blandness. It's competently bland. I don't know about competent, to be honest with you. I thought King James was rather odd. The lady was crazy. She was. We found out the reasons later on, but it was. Listen, it was okay until the end, until they brought up the Morax. It was actually a pretty cohesive episode. I actually chuckled quite a bit when King James, the guy playing King James, was great. Okay, but that ending with all of a sudden out of nowhere, it's an alien race, and I'm looking at my watch and I'm like, what the hell? And it had like 5 minutes to go. And how are they going to wrap this up with an alien race? And of course, they did it with just a lot of monologuing. Mud wrestling in Doctor Who? I don't know. It was like tentacle mud, movie Finobi. It was tentacle mud, which kinky. It was really dumb that they are not changing the cathedral or their cathedral, the times they land in, or their costumes, you mean? Katje. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. They did kind of explain that, though. They figured out that they were in, they went to they were going to go to Elizabeth I's coronation. But once they figured that out, hey, in past Doctor Who episodes, they have tried to fit in. I don't think they're thinking that through anymore. Or they're kind of constrained on time. I would notice this with Stephen Moffat too. Actually, the last 3 years, so many rushed endings. So I'm not going to lay this all at the feet of Chris Chibnall. I've done a couple videos of what I think is going on here, and I think it's really just they submit a script, and then the BBC runs it through 5 or 6 departments, and they put their notes in, and it gets by the time it gets back and ready for the screen, it is nowhere near what the writer wrote. And Neil Gaiman mentioned that. And why did he mention that? And I stated it in the video. Why would he just all of a sudden out of nowhere, while he's talking about a completely other show, go, yeah, Toby Whitehouse had his scripts messed with. He was defending his friend, which is, very honorable and good. But I think he was also sending a little message out about the BBC, like, maybe he's defending Chris Chibnall, seeing that he's getting a bunch of criticism, going, listen, I heard somewhere, I don't know if this is a fact, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Did Neil Gaiman, was he ever offered the showrunner job for Doctor Who? I mean, that would be a no-brainer to me. And maybe he has been, and he turned it down. He's been offered that before. And I think he was even offered that with American Gods and turned it down. I Cthulhu, for taking one for the team. I salute you, dear sir. Thank you so much. We only got a couple more to go. Mako, I am right there with you. Moffat, please come back. We're sorry. You beat me to the punch on that one. Listen, I've got something coming out about Moffat. I've got a video coming out about Moffat and the radical change between Moffat from 2011 to 2012. Cato Roan, the story sounds fascinating. It started out okay. So Norman, James the First was one of the most intelligent kings in Europe and knew what witchcraft was because he was a scientist. And I don't know much about him historically, but they treated him like a buffoon, like a total buffoon. He was funny. It was good comic relief. It was very Monty Python. Saved by Yaz. Yeah, she finally did something. She did something. And that's why, I haven't been too critical of the actors playing Ryan and Yaz. They've been given so little to do. And even Jodie, I honestly can't be super critical. She's a little too manic. I agree with my co-host Dennis. She's a little too manic, a lot of weird facial expressions, and kind of trying to find her own way through doing a David Tennant impression. I'm starting to see that like she's definitely going to be the more empathetic doctor, and that's fine. Exploring that would be interesting if she was given good writing. But after this, folks, it was you're going to get a delay, either a delay or a split season, but you're not getting a full season next year. There's been just too many rumors out there, and the BBC responded by saying we're definitely getting a season in 2019, but they didn't say full season. And two places reported, Starburst and I forgot the other one, Outpost Scaro, I believe, reported that we're probably only going to get 5 or 6 episodes, and that's including what I will stick to as a New Year's Eve episode because they've run out of ideas for Christmas. Although in an article, Jodie Whittaker stated that there was plenty of ideas. So I don't know. I'm a little confused. Um, oh my God, this is a great statement. Raging Droid CZ. It feels like a boring spin-off with a different Time Lord. That's what it feels like. I get a Class vibe from this big time. I don't know how many of you actually watch Class. I watched every episode. It was awful. It was bloody awful. They really have run out of ideas, says CD Horde. Maybe we should just appreciate their honesty. Tim F says Yaz literally does not need to be a companion. No, she doesn't. I mean, it would have been better if they kept her in her police uniform, if they had just ripped her right out from work and she didn't have time to go home and she was just and she was like the cop and we got more background on her later. I don't know. We saw her do one cop thing where we're 8 episodes in and she held a guy's arm behind his back, but then he got away. I figured out the reason why there will be no Cybermen in the new Who, because they have taken over the writing duties for the script. Chris Berger, well said. Nathan Norman says Doctor Who paint by numbers for those too stupid to understand a more complex plot, so it has to be dumbed down, and that's what they think. And Everything Cool says I want Cybermen. I do too, and that's what they think of the viewing audience of Doctor Who. They being the BBC. I always thought I feel you Whovians out there are a smart bunch. You're right up there with the Trekkies and the Trekkers. A very smart bunch of fans, passionate, good fans who deserve so much better than this. And yeah, there's plenty of people defending this. And, nostalgia does that to us. Listen, I did that with Star Wars back in the day. And I did that with Doctor Who. The first couple of seasons of Capaldi, where I'm okay with season 8, by the way. If you go back to the recaps, I was okay with it. And then I would think about it and I'm like, yeah, and I never rewatched those episodes. I love to go back and rewatch Doctor Who episodes. I watch one almost every day. And I have not gone back to 8, 9, and 10 at all. Well, with 8, I've gone back to The Mummy on the Orient Express. That's not true. I went back to that. Digital Spy, pass the bong, you hog. Right? Tim F says, Gary, you got to give up on STD as well. Why torture yourself and possibly have a blood vessel burst? I know, right? Yes. That is a promise, folks. If the quality of this show stays like this here at Doctor Who, I'm talking about, I'm done. After the New Year's Eve episode, I'm done. What else is there to talk about? Just come back every week and go, wow, that was bad. Star Trek Discovery, I feel the same way about. I'm going to give it one more season, then I'm out. There is so much good TV out there. Counterpart is coming out. I know I say it a lot. Counterpart is coming back December 8th. December 8th on Stars. It's worth the money. It is a great, great show. Hell, Dennis talks about there's a couple of time travel shows out right now. One's going away. There's Timeless. There's other stuff to watch. Christ, even the Origin on YouTube is okay. It's pretty good. Everything cool. Watching Age of Steel. That's what I'll probably cleanse my palate with today. Everything cool. Age of Steel. I've got my Cyberman mask right here. Yes. Yes. And you know, and you lost a customer, Doctor Who. I spend a lot of money. I spend a lot of money on Doctor Who. I spend a lot of time. I have multiple. I have all the episodes you can buy in multiple formats. I have collector's editions. You know, like this great David Tennant one that you can barely see, which is right there. And yeah, I'm not going to be spending any money on this. Access 2084 says Vikings is back in 3Ds. Yes, definitely watch Viking. Andre Merrick, hail, Nerdrotic, hail, Andre, our new patron. Thank you so much. It's great to see you. Truth Apocalypse, what is up? Yes, Vikings. Yeah, folks, I'm sorry. I wish I could report that I gave the show a chance. All right. I was even okay with the first episode, and maybe I'll be okay with Jodie Whittaker. I wanted to be won over. I really did. And you know what? You just can't win over with charm. It was great. Capaldi was a great doctor in a bunch of garbage, like we said before. It didn't save the show. And it's just sad because he deserved better. And it looks like the same thing is happening to Jodie, and they're going to do the same thing to her. They're going to, they're going to split series or delay series. And indeed, I haven't heard anybody deny that they are leaving. They're not leaving after 2019. And I'm still waiting for that. You think that would be the first thing they would say when that rumor gets out there. Nobody has said, nope, we're not leaving. We're staying till 2020. Nobody said that. So there you go. And yeah, well, you can still watch Doctor Who on Christmas. You can watch a good Christmas special. Yeah, there's lots out there to choose from. We're doing a Doctor Who Christmas watch party on our Patreon on Christmas Day. So more news on that. And you could join our Patreon for as little as $1. As little as $1. You could just dip in for $1 for 1 month and then bail if you want to hang out at the watch party. And the watch parties are fun on Patreon because you can actually watch it with us. I have a way. So thank you, Movie Fanobi. We will wrap this one up for now. I want to keep these short. Thank you once again. Oh my God, the 257 viewers. You are brilliant. I am sorry I can't give you a good review on the show, but I call them like I see them, folks. So please check out nerdrotic.com. That is where our live schedule is. We do everything live and visceral because you are part of the show. You are the co-host. You are the most important thing to this channel. Welcome to all the new subscribers. Almost 2,000 new subscribers. Christ. So thank you so much. I'm really grateful about that. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. May the small folks sing songs of your greatness.